everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we get to begin our solo play of Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin from Awaken Realms, landing on GameFound for September 27th. Now, where we left it off in the last video, which was the setup video, I got all this to the table, which you'll definitely want to check out if you want a better understanding of the different components and how they got all situated. Something else to mention is we've already gone through a majority of the Chapter 1 setup here. We're at the very tail end, where it now states that all players are going to go ahead and explore Location 101 together as a party, which is the Shunned Lands location we're currently inside of. That'll be inside this exploration journal. Now, if you haven't checked out that setup video, you'll also want to, not only for the setup instructions, but also I went over my character or hero's backstory there. So that'll give you some information on how and where we're at in terms of the story right now. But without further ado, let's dive into Entry 101, find out a little bit more about the world we're about to embark in. Inside the Exploration Journal, we land on Entry 101, Shunned Lands. It does state right here, if you do not have the Hints Part 1 status, then we go directly to verse 17 and we don't read any further, although I'm technically showing you this anyway. But we're going to move right to verse 17 because we do not have this status. And you'll remember from my setup video, there was a save sheet, and that save sheet does keep information like statuses. And those statuses are going to be really important to keep track of as you go through this Exploration Journal that are going to provide forks in the road, changes in direction on the narrative, and everything else that will impact your play. We don't currently have this status right now, so we are going to verse 17. Let's go.
The lively and safe coastal areas of Four Maidens now lie behind you. The path ahead, uphill and desolate, glistens with morning dew and floating wisps of opalescent weirdness. It's been a while since you've seen this capricious, ever-changing fog with your own eyes. The waystone nestled in high grass just off the trail looks almost spent. You walk toward it and inspect it with interest. Every waystone has its keeper in civilized lands, a feudal lord, a local town, or a brotherhood sworn to protect it. But here, so close to the pure weirdness that still covers most of Avalon, these landmarks are often snuffed out by the powers that dwell in the fog. There are also mentions of those who drain their power on purpose, though you can't comprehend how vile one would have to become to stoop this low. It's been a while since you've reactivated any stones, and it does require some effort and proper offerings, but you know you will never reach the King's Pass without their guiding light. As your hands carefully touch the surface, the stone comes back to life. Strands of weirdness in the air immediately slithering away like snakes from a flaming torch. You're lucky. This stone was not yet fully exhausted, and waking it up was easy. The others that lie ahead will require more effort.
As we're at the beginning of our adventure, we're going to have these little tutorial sections here, which will give us some game rules and reminders as we go along. This one is specifically talking about if you're in a location that has at least one revealed waystone mark in any of its corners, it means you can perform an activate a waystone action while inside that location. And the waystone in your location just becomes active, which of course takes it from its weirdness state, which would look like this, flipping it over to its cleared state. When the waystone model is placed over one of the corners in the top right-hand corner, in this case for 101, you'll also see that it sits on the corner of 102 as well. Every waystone, in terms of its location, will have an area that you can place the waystone in, and that is going to impact the cards in which it's connected to by its corners. So it would then automatically turn this 102 card, which is in weirdness, to its cleared side. The difference between a cleared side and a weirdness side is quite obvious in most cases, but there are icons right here in white that tell you it's on its clear side. You'll see a black icon, which is not the one above to the north at this point anymore as it's flipped over if it's on its weirdness side, but it'll also state weirdness as well to make it even more obvious. Also, keep your eye out for location cards that have multiple positions to place waystones. So for instance, here you'll see on 102, there are two corners that have positions for waystones. So in order to activate this one in the future, we have to move our character into this location card and of course resolve any bolt icons that are there. Those are almost instant things that need to be resolved. And then I could take an action inside the location card to activate the waystone and be able to place it here, which would again deal with some of the weirdness in other parts as more cards connect. Every single one of these waystone locations connects to 4 other cards. At this point, the Exploration Journal is telling us to go ahead and fill in hints 1 on our status sheet. And as you remember from earlier, that's going to allow us to actually read that initial page we saw. But first, it tells us to go ahead and resolve the top event card, which is Chapter 1, Part 1. The card is called A Path Less Traveled, and it states, now that the Waystone is active, you steel yourself for the journey ahead, knowing that reaching the King's Pass won't be easy. You're about to make your first step on a road to the pass when a strange feeling creeps up your back. Is something watching you from the midst? Now we have a quest here. It says, reach the King's Pass where roads leading to many forlorn lands cross. And then it says at the bottom, your initial exploration now ends. You're free to do whatever you wish to pursue your quest. Remember, you may explore Location 101 again to find more exciting places and stories. The exploration action is free. That is something else that is a big change from the original Tainted Grail to now, is that initial exploration action does not cost any energy, but there might be cost to energy once you dig into an exploration action. So we're going to go ahead and go with that very first entry that we couldn't read off the top.
Once fertile farmland, now a dreary waste, punctuated by wooden carcasses of abandoned windmills. As you watch their frayed blades slice the grey sky to pieces, movement flutters in the corner of your eye. You feel something watching you from between the structures. But that can't be right. Only shadows dwell here, reminding sore-footed travellers of the region's opulent past.
We have a choice here to make. We want to either search the windmills, follow the mysterious shadow, turn back and return to Four Maidens, or we could leave. I honestly want to know more about this mysterious shadow. Maybe it's friendly. Maybe. Now, there are requirements to choose specific options sometimes. In this case, we need to spend one energy or have one available to spend. And we also need to have a particular attribute at least to that first level. So in this case, we do have one courage, so we are able to go ahead and use this option. Now, this entry has a status connection to it, but we don't have that status, so we continue reading on.
Catching shadows is a fool's errand. As soon as you move in its direction, the shape struts away and disappears into the surrounding weirdness. To ensure it wasn't just hallucination, you approach the spot where it disappeared. The footprints on the ground are very real and not human. Their shape and irregular gait betray that whoever left them was severely disfigured. A glint of gold in the mud catches your attention as you inspect the footprints. It is a small golden coin from Homelands, bearing the countenance of King Arthur Pendragon. A hole drilled through it with a leather strap revealed the creature was wearing it as a charm. You know of only one group that wears the mementos of one true king as their amulets. But what would they do so close to civilized realms? You fail to find more clues, but you do locate another, smaller, a more regular set of tracks leading from one of the neglected farm fields to one of the dilapidated windmills. Is someone still living there, sustaining themselves on wild crops?
It tells me now to go ahead and gain 1 wealth, and we also get that status that I alluded to, because if we try and do it again, well, we won't be able to actually take advantage of this to gain wealth unlimited. So along the bottom of our player board here, we have the different resource areas. We have food, wealth, experience, and magic. Because I just gained 1 resource and wealth, placed a cube in there. It's also worth mentioning for the option I chose, I had to spend some energy, so I dropped from 6 to 5, and I had to have 1 encourage, which I did. That allowed me to even take the choice that I did. Otherwise, I would have had to go after something else in terms of an option with that encounter. At this point, we're ready to continue our active quest, which is to reach King's Pass. That is the major aim right now in our chapter and specific part of our journey. This reference card right here, very handy. It tells you the order of the day. We skipped the start of the day completely at the beginning of our journey. We're now in the during the day phase, and inside of there, you're able to perform actions like we just did by taking an explore action, which is free in order to do something in a given area. Now, there are going to be specific costs on some other things, and we'll talk more about how actions work in a second, but we also have an end of day when we eventually pass. We'll head to that phase and then wrap back around to start a new day. So what kind of things can you do during the day like we're in right now? In the middle, well, we have all these actions here. We can explore, we can travel, we can activate a waystone, we can challenge a guardian, we can do a location action that's currently face up on a location card we have. There's characters, secrets, and items that have actions on them, so we can use those, or we can just choose to pass when we're all done. Also, something to look at is the location cards will have flavor text on them that might give you hints as to what's going on in that location, or really just some interesting notes. So here we have, once a fertile farmland, now a dreary waste, punctuated by wooden carcasses of abandoned windmills. So as you go through the journey, that text, that flavor text, might become more interesting. This is just the beginning couple locations. We've actually heard this text before, but you're going to want to keep an eye on that stuff because it might be telling you a bit about what's going on in that area. You can see up here at the Crooked Sentinel, it states a crooked statue of a hooded four-dweller juts out of the rolling hills. So again, it kind of points you towards something of interest within that location, maybe a highlight or something that's worth looking into, potentially, of course. And you don't want to take everything as being a positive inside of Tainted Grail. There's lots of twists and turns. So seeing as I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and actually spend 2 energy in order to harvest wild crops. So I'm going to gain 1 food. I can only do this once per day. When you decide to take a location action that has a once per day mention beside it, it's a good idea to place a time marker on it just to remind you you've already taken this action so you don't take it again in that given day. It's also going to cost us 2 more energy, and remember, your energy is really vital and important to what you can actually do within a given day, because as it depletes, it starts to, well, lower your ability to do too much. So we're going to go ahead and drop from 5 down to 3, but we're also going to go up by 1 food. Elgan's now gone up to 3 food. It's worth mentioning at the end of the day phase, your character can eat 1 food if they have it. And of course, without food, you won't be able to regenerate your health or reduce your terror value. But when you do eat food, that is going to help you to continue on in your journey. So accumulating food is not a bad idea. Now, wealth, which is the one we just got moments ago, gives you things like gold, gems, and other riches that are going to help you buy life-saving items and equipment that you're going to need through your journey. You have magic there on the far right, which is supernatural power that can help you during encounters, and it's required to enable waystones, so something you definitely want to hold on to. And then you have experience. Spend on raising your attributes, acquiring skills, and buying new combat and diplomacy cards that greatly increase your chances of survival. So you'll notice the attributes on all sides of the dashboard here. Once you get 2 in a given one, like spirituality right here, the next time it upticks to the next level, we're actually going to be able to get a skill token, and we'll show you how that works at that point. Just before we move along, I want to talk quickly about attributes again, this time going a little bit deeper in terms of how they're upgraded. Essentially, you have opposing pairs going on here on your player board. So for aggression, you have the opposite being empathy, courage opposite being caution, practicality opposite being spirituality. Now, if you want to uptick one of these attributes, you have to take into account the actual full pair and all the points you've put into that pair. So for instance, if I wanted to upgrade something on the spirituality or practicality side, I take into account I have 1, 2, 3 here, so I'm putting on my 4th point. If I'm putting on my 4th point, it's going to cost me 8 XP, as it's 2 XP for every point that's already been placed. So that's really going to start to add up, and all that XP is going to get basically caught up in here as you go through the gameplay. Once I get enough, then I can spend it, uptick things, and of course, if you go beyond the 2 positions that you have in a given attribute, you start going into skill tokens, and I'll show you, again, as I mentioned earlier, how that really starts to evolve later on. So I think I'll have Elgan use a travel action, which is going to cost 1 energy, dropping him from 3 down to 2, and we're going to head into the Crooked Sentinel. In order for your orthogonal movement to be valid, you need to have direction keys pointing back and forth at each other like these right here. If you don't have that, then that is basically considered kind of an impassable border or area, and usually it's based on the design. You'll actually even see it from the artwork itself. Might be a mountain range or a river kind of breaking the path and not allowing it to move, but look for those arrows to make sure that you've got the direction keys you need in order to move across them and have it be a valid move. So we're now in the Crooked Sentinel, and we have a lightning bolt here, which means we have to interact with this right away. It says if you don't have the hints part 2 status, which we don't currently, then we explore this location. Remember, exploring is free. Now, just before you go ahead and resolve that bolt icon, you got to remember to look for any numerical values on the location card you just moved into and place those cards weirdness side face up, unless, of course, you have a waystone activated that's connected to one corner edge. Then you can actually reveal that card to its clear side. And just like that, here's the landscape all laid out. We'll go ahead and resolve this bolt icon and find out more about the location in the exploration journal for 102. It states here, if you don't have the hints point 2 status, then go to verse 10. So we're going to do that right now.
With the dreary, shunned lands behind you, you now draw close to King's Pass. You've already walked this road once, in the opposite direction, though the time makes memories into a blur. You know there should be a narrow, winding trail leading up to the pass not far in the east. To the west, the land drowns in pure weirdness. You'd rather not take that path, as each step through this ever-shifting mist is a real danger, and spending a night in its coils can cost you your life or sanity. Still, they say that adventurers brave enough to walk beyond the lights of waystones sometimes find things that wouldn't be possible otherwise, for better or worse.
And again, as we're towards the early portion of this play here, we have the tutorial section here just giving us reminders of what we're running into and how to resolve it. So as I mentioned before, when you should find any of these bolt icons, then you're going to resolve this right away. It's going to talk about resolving the weirdness versus clear side, clearing that all up. And you've got the attachment of any new location, so placing 103 and 104, which I've just gone ahead and already done in advance. And we're going to gain that part 2 status. So we've got all that stuff situated and dealt with. So in terms of statuses to date, we have this one checked and these two both for hints checked. At this point, we're now going to read the portion we couldn't read before because we now actually have the hints part 2 status.
A crooked statue of a hooded foredweller presides over the rolling hills, a repulsive memento that this land once belonged to other, much older beings. They say the former rulers of Avalon left these statues all over the island, but to what end you cannot fathom. The statue's long coke splits near the base, providing enough space for a grown human to squeeze inside. A broken rune wagon rests on the side of an old trail that weaves past the sentinel, the wagon's guards looking at you suspiciously.
We can demolish the statue, go inside the statue, study the magic aura of the statue. Now, taking a look at these options here, honestly, demolishing the statue sounds kind of fun. However, Elgan does not have the aggression required in order to pull this off, so that's not going to be an option. Going inside the statue could be an option. I have no idea what I'm going to find in there. That's part of the fun. This one here for the studying of the magic aura, that actually would align with Elgan really well based on his really high spirituality, but I don't have the faint notion part 1 status, so that's not an option right now. I'm about halfway there on that one. This one is to search the mountains beyond the statue, but I'm still kind of curious about the statue itself. That sounds like you're kind of going away from the statue, although maybe we could find something of use, so that could be good. The other option here, which actually doesn't cost any energy, which might be what I want to do, seeing as my energy is getting low for the day, is just to approach the broken rune wagon and see what's there. Entry 7 states that if we have the Friend of Nobility part 1 status, we go to a different verse. Well, we don't, so we won't be doing that.
Rich nobles of Avalon often travel with wagons like this. Iron-clad mammoths of thick oak, walls adorned with runes meant to ward against weirdness. Yet all this arcane protection did nothing to save the wagon from a broken axle. 2 men-at-arms and a coachman now try to repair it, but the wagon's sheer size and weight make it almost impossible.
So we get to choose one here. We have quite a few options here as well. Spend 2 energy to help them repair the axle, but we need to have of that particular attribute, which is practicality, which we do have. So I could do this one to help them repair it. I could forcefully barge into the wagon, but I would need some aggression, which I currently don't have, so that's not an option for me. Ask them where they are going and what's inside. Could do that. Ask them why they fly the banners of the Dead Kingdom. Could do that as well, or we could just flat out leave. So during the day, you're going to be spending energy like I already have, and I've only got 2 left. Actually, if I use the 2 in order to help these individuals out and help them repair the axle, it's going to put me into a state of exhaustion, which is this red area right here, which is going to have an effect on how much energy I get back going into the next day. It's actually going to cap me at 4 instead of bringing me all the way back up to the norm of 6. So really, I don't have an overwhelming desire to resolve this right now. What I can do is choose to essentially end the exploration and leave and just come back to them the next day and try to help them. So for now, I've left those 2 individuals next to their wagon trying to repair the axle. I might come back tomorrow and help them out when I have a little bit more energy. But for now, I want to talk about something on the location card that I'm currently in here with the Crook Sentinel. You'll see there's location seals, those 3 circles just underneath of each of the titles. If you happen to see an eye icon, that represents a vision. And if you end your day in a location with a vision icon, you get a prophetic vision that's going to come to you in your sleep. And I think for now, we're going to pass and call it a day. Let's move to the end of day phase. So at this point, you'd resolve any end of day effects. So if you have a character that has any effects from items or skills or anything else that should resolve at the end of a day, all of them get resolved right now in any order you choose. As I chose not to exhaust my character by helping those individuals fix their axle, I'm able to actually rest all the way back up to a full allotment. Again, if I had been in the red for the end of the day, I would have been exhausted and could only go up to 4. Instead, I'm at 6. You can choose to recover by consuming 1 food, which will up your energy by 1. It'll increase your health by 1 and drop your terror down by 1. I don't need to do this right now, or I don't wish to do it right now, but I will also mention that as your health takes a hit down the column, it has a little lip to the side, which is going to immediately impact your energy levels. So that is something to keep an eye on. Next, we check to see if any characters are on a weirdness location. In other words, a very dark and gloomy space. And our hero currently is not, because we do have a waystone nearby that is clearing up the area. And so because we're in a clear location, we don't suffer any kind of damage from weirdness. Now, if we had have been sitting right in here, then our actual character would be suffering 2 health damage and 2 terror damage, which is not good in any case. At this point, you have the opportunity to advance your character. So if you actually have any experience, which I don't yet, you can then pay the experience to raise your attributes, gain new skills, or add new combat and diplomacy cards. The next step is a fun one, as you get to change up your decks, diplomacy or combat. As long as you have up to 10 cards going into the next day in those decks, then you can change out for any cards you've already gained. So in the previous step, if you advanced your character in a way that got you a new combat or new diplomacy card, you can now go ahead and get that card into your deck, again staying inside the 10 card limit. This really allows you to kind of build a deck that is going to cater to what you might plan to do on the next upcoming day. And the final thing, which we touched on moments ago, is experiencing visions. If we're on a location at the end of the day that has the icon, as you can see there, we are going to be seeing a vision in our sleep.
In your dream, you travel through a strange, unknown land, seeking shelter from clouds of weirdness in the shadow of four-dweller statues, similar to the one in whose presence you now sleep. To push back the swirling, opalescent doom that floods from all directions, you must give these silent watchers everything you have. Your meager supplies of food, your magic trinkets, and sometimes even your own blood. What a torturous way to travel. Regardless of your efforts, the statues are always hungry for more, and as you grow weaker, you realize with horror there's only one possible ending. You wake from this nightmare exhausted, but also relieved it was only a dream. For now, in your dream, you travel through a strange, unknown land, seeking shelter from clouds of weirdness in the shadow of four-dweller statues, similar to the one in whose presence you now sleep. To push back the swirling, opalescent doom that floods from all directions, you must give these silent watchers everything you have. Your meager supplies of food, your magic trinkets, and sometimes even your own blood. What a torturous way to travel. Regardless of your efforts, the statues are always hungry for more, and as you grow weaker, you realize with horror there's only one possible ending. You wake from this nightmare exhausted, but also relieved it was only a dream. For now.
That's going to do it for the very first day of our journey. Now we move into day number 2, and we actually do the start of day phase, starting with resolving the start of day effects. So if characters have any effects like items and skills that should resolve at the start of the day, all of them should be resolved at this point in any chosen order they wish. At this point, we flip location cards to the weirdness side. So we check every location in play and flip all of them that don't have a waystone in one of their corners to their weirdness side. So we have nothing to change here currently. We also remove time tokens, so the one that we placed from last time will be removed. Now we activate any guardians. If we had any, they're special roaming encounters. If there's any guardians on the table, we just roll a guardian die for each of them and resolve the roll according to the rules found in the guardians section inside the rulebook. We will likely run into this in the future, so don't worry about it. And then we move on to cleaning up active events area. So we're going to return all the non-quest events to their piles from the active events area. The random event cards are placed at the bottom of the random events pile. The special event and story event cards are placed back in the box, and we're going to reveal a brand new event. So just to show you visually how this area operates, we have the event deck here, which is going through chapters and parts on our adventure every single day. And this is where those revealed cards are landing in the active events area. Now we got the first one off the top was a chapter 1, part 1. That was for the very first day. It had a quest on it. So this is going to stay in the active events area and is not going to be discarded right now. We would do a cleanup right now at this point, at the beginning of the second day, to get rid of anything that doesn't have a quest on it. But I don't have any cards like that, so there's no cleanup to do. Now, if I was actually cleaning up cards, if it happened to be a random event, it would just go to the bottom of the random event deck, which is off camera right now. If it happened to be one of these particular cards, like a story or event card, it just goes back to the game box because we've passed that point in the narrative. So for the second day, we're going to go ahead and draw the next card off the top, which is Chapter 1, Part 2. And you're going to see right off the hop here that this one has a bunch of narrative text we're going to read in a second and some conditions, but it doesn't make mention of any quest. So when we get to the end of day 2 and we go into day 3, this is a card that will end up going back to the game box, as it's not going to stick around because there's no quest on it. It was just kind of like a one-time thing that affected us for day 2. So let's go ahead and read this and find out more about what's going on. As you make your camp, you notice strange shapes lurking in the dark at the edge of your vision. In the late evening silence, their inhuman whispers reach your ears, making your skin crawl, even though you can only make out single words. The sword of old, crucible, ruined ones, the passage east. Finally, you can't take it anymore. You grab a flaming branch from the campfire and swing it at them, sending sparks into the starry night above. The shapes slither back into the darkness, though you are confident they will come back soon. It's best to hurry. Each character is going to lose a health and gain 1 terror. So heading back to our player board here, we're going to see our health drop down to 6, and we're going to see our terror go up to 1. Everything there is squared away, and again, remember that impact to health dropping in terms of energy. Again, no impact now, but if that keeps going down, it certainly will. Now, there's a couple things on the player board which I didn't touch on in day number 1, although I mentioned their existence and setup, I believe, but this is the ability here for Elgan to make a weird candle, which certainly sounds like something that would be beneficial, seeing as well, creating a light or emitting light is probably a positive. So you can see here for 2 energy, I can pay 1 food and gain a secret card 2 as long as there's any available. And I imagine that's going to be a card that is a weird candle that will likely give us some kind of benefit, hopefully. That's a lot of energy to use, but I think it might make sense to do it. Now down below we have what's known as kind of like a passive negative condition of the character, which is unfortunate. This is called a fear of the weird. So whenever you enter a location with weirdness, you're going to gain a terror on top of any other triggered effects that happen there. So basically, Elgan's not a real big fan of being left in areas of weirdness. Now, before I go ahead and make that weird candle and commit to it anyway, in terms of the energy, I'm looking at the landscape here and I'm very intrigued by this stone chorus over here to the east. I kind of want to look at it, check it out, see what's going on there. There is a vision available there. It also states at the very bottom there's a trigger that would happen the second we move in. We draw and resolve a green encounter, so that could be interesting. And just so you know, there's differences across the encounters in terms of what those decks do for you. The blue deck is mostly used when you visit settlements, and it contains dangerous situations as well as personal and diplomatic challenges. And you'll know you're in a settlement because inside of those location seal areas where there's icons for visions that we've seen before, you'll see a settlement icon there, and that'll let you know that you can potentially interact with a blue encounter there. The green deck contains natural threats such as animals or legendary beasts, as well as outlaws and travelers who basically just roam the wild. Many of the encounters are going to grant food when you defeat these particular encounters. The purple deck contains mysterious and supernatural threats, so you'll have to discover its significance as you kind of go through that deck, but I imagine that is the more aggressive or interesting of the 3, as it roots itself very heavily in that supernatural element. So let's go ahead and spend 1 energy, dropping me from 6 down to 5, and Elgan is going to travel east to the stone chorus. There are some location cards to attach, and there's also the instant effect that happens the second we walk into this location. So at this point, we're going to draw a green encounter card. And it appears we have found a wandering merchant. The card states that you can sell any number of your items for 1 wealth each, and you can buy 1 food for 1 wealth or 3 food for 2 wealth. So this is quite interesting from the standpoint that I don't have a whole bunch of items yet. So this was an interesting one to get here, but I do have 1 wealth, because remember I generated 1 wealth earlier, so I could actually have it converted into food. which I'm kind of tempted to do, seeing as this is here and it's kind of, I'm already in the midst of it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and spend the 1 wealth and hope I don't regret this later if I need it to purchase something else. But we're going to buy this. So we're basically going to convert this 1 wealth resource that I have, and it's going to go back into my player board as food. It's always awesome to grab up more food, and now we have the stone chorus here in front of us.
They say the weirdness, when left to its own devices, slowly transforms even the land itself. You know of no better proof than this place. The basalt walls of the narrow pass display warped, inhuman faces of stone, their mouths agape. The salty coastal wind carries their voices to faraway places. What strange song do they sing?
We have options here. We could make an offering to the chorus, spending some energy and either wealth or food. And the next one is to listen to their songs, sing with them, search the woods below the chorus, or leave. Now, seeing as I was able to gather enough food recently to feel comfortable with spending a food, I'm going to use 1 food and we're going to drop our energy down from 5 to 3. We're going to go ahead and make an offering. This one is short and sweet. It says 1 chosen party member with 3 or less magic gains 1 magic. Well, I only have 1, so I'm getting another one. That's going to give me 2 total. Now, at this point, I'm sitting pretty good because I now have 3 energy left. It would cost me 2 if I wanted to put down another waystone just north there so that I could kind of be safe heading up in that direction, which probably is the right thing to do, and it wouldn't push me into exhaustion, which is great. I also put a time token down here because we resolve this once per day ability, or trigger, I should say, the lightning bolt on the card. So for now, my next action is going to be to spend 2 more of my energy, which is going to drop me down from 3 to 1, which is just on the cusp of being exhausted, but not quite. And we're going to also spend 1 magic because, well, we just gained a magic. We worked out really well. And we're going to go ahead and place down a waystone. And on top of that requirement, we also have to choose to spend 1 wealth or 1 food. So I'm going to go ahead and spend 1 food. So now we're down to 2 food. Here's a look at how the landscape has changed thanks to that new waystone being placed. Things have opened up for us. Here's a look at my character board in terms of what I have left for resources. I got 2 food, 1 magic. My energy level for the day is down to 1, which I'm perfectly happy with. I don't want to go into exhaustion. One thing I forgot to do though, after I rested from the first day, is I have a card here, a personal card called Self-Reliant, where it says after you rest, you gain an energy, which means because I'm playing this game solo with 1 character, it boosts me beyond after a rest when I'm in a great state. So for instance, when I actually don't go into exhaustion, instead of going for 6, I actually get 1 extra. So I'm going to bump my energy up by 1. I'm glad I caught this before the day ended, so I do have a little bit left to use if I choose to use it. But I'll have to remember that going forward because, again, when you're only playing 1 character, you don't have that second one to go off and do other things. So they give you a boost on that front, and they also give you the ability to draw more cards in combat and diplomacy, something else to be aware of, and a higher hand limit. Honestly, that extra energy doesn't really change my mind too much because if I choose to make a weird candle, I'm going to push myself into exhaustion, which I don't think is worth it for the weird candle, seeing as I just spent a whole bunch of resources to put up a new waystone, which covers things for me. I think what I'm going to do is stay put because of the fact the location I'm currently in does have a vision available, which could give me a benefit. So again, we'll see if that pans out, but I think I'm going to stay put right here. So Elgan's going to rest up for the night, which is going to jump the stamina up to the 6th starting position, +1 because of the Self-Reliant card that you saw. I'm also going to rest, so I'm going to pay a food in order to gain a health, an additional stamina, and to lose 1 terror. And that was honestly a great time to do that because of the fact my stamina is maxed way up there, which is awesome. So I've got lots of energy going into the next day. No advancements necessary here or changing to the card deck, so let's go into the vision now and see what we have.
It's infuriating. Year after year, countless travellers walk by chittering in their pathetic human voices. In the meantime, you are forced to stay silent. What stories would you tell, given the voice? What horrors and madness from eras long past would you bestow on your listeners? Eventually, you can no longer contain yourself. The eons of tragedies and triumphs itching to get out. And as the weirdness envelops you, blurring the lines between what's possible and what's not, you suddenly find a way to express everything boiling inside you. Suddenly you begin to sing, and your voice feels the air from the tips of the four maidens to the lone waystone of the King's Pass. Your voice will shake the earth and make everyone in the nearby lands flee in fear.
It says at the bottom, new lead. The stone chorus learned its songs from travelers passing up and down the trail to King's Pass. If you come back to it with a song it doesn't know, it could learn something new. So as you can see, sometimes when you have a vision, it's going to give you information that you almost wish you had earlier before you made a decision. Like when I first arrived here in Stone Chorus and I interacted with what was on the location card for the electric bolt icon, which I had to do. Now, I didn't have to do anything. I could have chosen to leave that ability to interact with that area and done nothing, but instead I chose to make an offering, and that was my decision. But it sounds like, based on the vision, that singing would have been the better option in that situation. So I guess we're staying there the night. We might have the opportunity to do that in the morning. We begin day number 3, and we start by, of course, flipping any locations that don't touch a waystone to the weirdness side. We remove time tokens, which I just did from the location I'm currently in. Any guardians would activate, there are none. And we clear any active events from the area that are not a quest-based card. So that's going to see this one right here removed and a new one coming in, Chapter 1, Part 3. The card states, the Seekers gather. It says, someone visits you in the dead of night. Go to the Book of Secrets, verse 15.
The sound of the sea gently wakes you up. The same sound that accompanied your every morning for the last several years spent in Four Maidens. It takes a moment for you to realize you're no longer there. You're on a mountain trail near the King's Pass. And this is not the sound of a sea, but countless overlapping whispers that blur together into a single liquid hum that rises and falls like a tide. This realization is enough to make you spring to your feet instantly. Crooked shapes sway in the dark around you, each horrible in its own way. They glisten with old coins that hang from them like amulets. Some pinned scrolls or scraps of paper to their flesh. They carry torches, candles, braziers, anything that could light their path. Kingseekers. Cursed creatures obsessed with finding the way to the court of Arthur. Warped by weirdness they spend most of their time in. You've never seen so many of them in one place. Now you realize it is them who kept haunting you in your last days of the journey. They were the shadows that seemed to follow your every step. But why did they seek you? The wind carries your name, one of the creatures says, interrupting your thoughts. The weirdness shows glimpses of the future. We've seen you, standing in front of 3 monarchs of ruin, the sacred goblet filled with blood, the old crown restored, the road east open, the true king, the king, the king. Other Kingseekers sway in excitement, repeating the words. The true king. Found. You tell them to go away. You're just a traveller. The goal that pushed you onto this trail already seems impossible, not to mention seeking a route east or facing the kings of ruin. But it seems you have little to say in the matter. The Kingseekers keep closing their circle, ignoring your thrashing. They grab you by your arms, their long fingers digging deep into your flesh as their stench overpowers you. Finally, one of them lifts his hand and touches your forehead. You throw your head back in pain. It's almost as if white-hot iron touched your skin. The Kingseekers immediately begin to retreat. One of us, they say. One of us. Seek the king. You collapse to the ground.
It appears we've got ourselves an item, a global one, Brand of the Kingseeker. It says to some it is the highest honor, to others it's a grim sentence. For 1 energy, drain a waystone, remove a waystone that touches your location, gain a magic, then each character in your location with 3 health or less gains 3 health. So beginning a brand new day here inside the Stone Chorus, and great timing on this, because if you take a look at us exploring this location again, you'll see if we want to sing with them, it's only available if there's no time token on the location. In other words, we can't have moved in here to this location, which would then trigger the bolt, and then try to do that particular option when exploring in this area. So we've had to be here for a while. In other words, we have to have spent some time, which we have. have. And now I'm going to go ahead and spend 1 energy, drop me from +2 down to +1, and we're going to go to verse 1.
As your voice joins the chorus, the faces grow silent. Your song is all wrong. They do not like it, and they do not like you. The feeling of being an intruder spreads from your bones, and you feel almost as if your skeleton moves on its own, walking away from the choir. You wouldn't dare return without a proper song.
It says, new lead, return to the chorus when you learn a song that's fit for them. Each party member gains a terror and the expiration ends. So we're a terrible singer, nothing in the realm enjoys our singing, and because of this, we gain terror as we basically have an out-of-body experience because we're that bad at singing. That's pretty impressive. I think that's a new low. So I'm going to go ahead and spend another energy for Elgan, dropping him down to 6, and we are going to head north, traveling to that northern location, which is going to reveal the location to the west. And it appears we have found ourselves a reflected town, which sounds pretty good, but we're over here in this area. We could explore in here, which I will likely do, but there's also something else noting right on the actual location card itself. For 2 energy, we can relax here to lose some terror. So if we want to try to chill out after our terrible singing experience, we can do that, but I think I'll hold off for now. We're going to go ahead and explore this area and see what it could provide.
The last stretch of trail just before the King's Pass is safe and almost free of weirdness. Perhaps this is why a well-armed group of mercenaries and brigands set up their camp here. With the road blocked by a circle of their armoured wagons, no one can go further north without their consent, and without paying an exorbitant toll.
If you don't have the obstacles part 1 status, then we go to verse 1, which sounds like us. If we have the stocking up part 1 status, we go to verse 9. Otherwise, we choose. So in this case, we don't have the obstacles part 1 status, so we're going to verse 1.
As you reach the wagon fort and walk up to the only gap between the wagons, you notice several archers eyeing your every move from behind oaken bullocks. A scar-covered man in a leather jerkin walks out of the camp to meet you. Dozens of metal rings braided into his beard clink as he goes. You want to get to the pass. The toll is an ounce of gold per head. You gasp. This is way more than you could have expected, and certainly more than you can afford.
Gain the obstacles part 1 status. That's good. So we get the status we need here to progress a little bit forward. And the new lead says you have to find another way to get past Wagenburg and reach the King's Path to the north. Go to verse 11.
The brigand commander blocks Wagenburg's entrance, looking at you expectantly.
It says to choose one here. The top one, we would have to have 1 in empathy, which we do, and we'd have to spend an energy to try and convince him to let you into the fort to trade. The other thing we could do is ask him why the toll is so steep, which is actually not a bad idea. Attempt to fight our way in, which does not probably sound like a good idea, but would kind of be funny. Pay the toll if we have 10 wealth, which we certainly don't, or we can just leave. I think I'm going to ask him about the toll price, and then we're probably just going to end the exploration, loop back around, and try the different path now that we have the obstacles status.
I've assembled the finest selection of cutthroats and brigands from all over the 4 maidens. Their wages don't pay themselves. You know how costly it is to keep all these people here, surrounded by weirdness, so close to the battlefield of 3 kings. Besides, no trade or messengers were coming through the pass in more than a decade. You likely have an excellent reason if you're heading to the other realms now, so think of it as an investment. And if you have no gold to invest, make way for those who do.
We have a choice here, so we can again convince him to try to let us in, attempt to fight our way in, pay the toll, or leave. I'm not really driving too hard to accomplish this at this point, but a part of me thinks that I should. Like I want to kind of head west to the reflected town, but I'm like, maybe I should actually make a push here and see what happens. So let's do it. Let's try and convince him to let us in just to see what happens. I've been persuaded in my own mind. So after spending an energy dropping from 6 to 5, it says...
It takes some effort, but eventually you convince the bearded brigand to allow you into his wagon fort. You move into this circular fortress, your every move observed by dozens of armed men. Within, the camp's quartermaster approaches you, eager to trade.
So we have the option to buy food by paying wealth, which that's not going to help me right now because I don't have any wealth at all. Sell food, I can pay a food to gain wealth. Well, that sounds cool, but I only have 1 food left, and I probably don't want to be doing that. This is, again, I did this strictly just to kind of see what options are here, then the actual idea that would I be able to do anything. We can buy equipment, so draw the top 3 item cards from the item deck A. So the different item deck, or I should say the item deck, is broken into multiple tiers by letter. So this kind of allows you to find groups of items that you can potentially pick up. So you can buy any number of them for 2 wealth each. So basically you can take a bunch of food, sell a bunch of stuff, get some money, and then pay that money in order to get some items. It's kind of the loop there that you're doing. You can sell equipment, of course, to gain wealth. You can try to buy a weird candle, but actually Elgan can create one on his own. So I think we're just going to leave this. And it's not to say that there wasn't interesting options there. There's a lot of interesting options there. I just don't currently have what I'd like to have to make the most use of it. So we'll just continue on. So as exploring is free, I'm going to explore again in this location, allowing me to interact with this very first area here. But now because I have the obstacles part 1 status, I can actually go to verse 9 instead.
With new ingredients in your pouches and the recipe in your memory, you're now ready to create and light candle that could clear the path.
Of course, we know we can create candles with my awesome hero. So choose one, 2 energy to light a terror-inducing candle. You can pay a magic, go to the Book of Secrets, verse 24, or try to find the way around the fort, go to verse 6, or approach the fort, or leave. So again, it's multiple different ways to approach getting into the fort, which I already accomplished. I don't think there's going to be too much here for me to try anything else, but I'm sure there could be some hidden gems inside of this. But for now, I think I've covered it. We're going to probably continue over to the reflected town. So right now, I'm going to spend another energy, drop me from 5 down to 4. We're going to head into the reflected town. If I end up staying here, I end up seeing another vision in the future, which is good. We also have to reveal card 107, which will be on its weirdness side. In the town is a location action here. We have the ability to ask the hermit for healing, so we can actually pay a wealth to gain 3 health, which sounds pretty awesome. Again, there's some flavor text here like there was in the other ones. I haven't actually been reading them all, but you guys can certainly read them as I go through. It says here, the spires and townhouses of this once prosperous Lothian settlement live on as a reflection. So at this point, let's go ahead and explore the town in the exploration journal, see what's going on.
In ages past, a Lothian town stood at the edge of a clear mountain loch, its stone houses and spires reflecting in the water's silvery surface. The town is gone now, laid to ruin in some age-long past. But you've heard that the reflection lives on, etched eternally in the waters. A small stone shack rests by the shore, pieces of rubble haphazardly thrown together. A lone goat bleats in its wooden pen.
If you don't have the negotiator part 1 status, go to verse 19. Otherwise, you can choose one of a number of options here, but we don't have that negotiator status, so 19 is where we're headed.
As you're about to enter the ruined Lothian town, a ragged, thin boy appears before you. At first, he makes a quick step back into the ruins. But after a moment of thought, he begins to approach, saying, "Please, traveller, I came looking for my sister, but the hermit by the lake didn't see her. A couple of days ago, a group of weird men went past our home, heading up the old path into the mountains east of here. That's when my sister, Alyssa, went missing. She's 14 years old and has an angel's voice. Please, if you find her, get her back home, south of the Crooked Sentinel. My family is hiding in one of the windmills there." He keeps insisting, so you promise to keep your eyes open. Then he departs south.
Interesting. This actually kind of buttons up about 2 or 3 different narrative thoughts that I had along the journey all the way up till now in terms of what the heck was going on with the original creepy shadows near the windmills at the very beginning. The song that I potentially might need to sing inside of Stone Chorus sounds like she would be the individual to know it. So there's a few loose ends to tie up here with this particular lead, I want to say, that if I resolve this, it might actually kind of start pointing me in the right direction. As you can see just to the right, but you can't actually see the check boxes, I have gone ahead and checked off the box for negotiator for that status right there. And it says here, new lead, a girl from shunned lands was supposedly taken by a band that traveled up the old path, cutting through the lands west of here. Exploration ends. So exploring again inside the reflected town allows me to use my negotiator part 1 status, and that will allow... So being as we have... Now that I have the negotiator status, we can explore again for free in order to choose a different option this time around, being that we are now ready to negotiate. We could spend 2 to try to reach the overlook above the trail. Requires some extra stuff in order to pull that off, which I don't have. We could search the town's ruins, which we could do by spending energy. We could take a swim in the lake. We could look into the reflection on the lake. We could visit the stone shack. We could check the shattered waystone. So this is really digging in quite a bit. I spent an energy going from 4 down to 3 in order to swim in the lake, and it looks like I'm going to have a lot more options from here.
The water is cool and still. Floating among the reflected clouds of the sky above the lake feels almost like flying. The lake is so expansive that searching without a good idea where and what to look for will take a lot of time.
The hint here says, looking at the weirdness covered version of the location and reading the lore description on its card sometimes reveals additional clues and points of interest. Interesting. So it's kind of giving us that tip that we should really look at the location art that we have here that might help us in picking the right area of the lake to go check out. It ends up being a really tough call because southeast and southwest of the river actually look quite interesting based on the flavor text here talking about spires and townhouses. It looks like there's a lot going on down that bottom area of the lake. Which one I should choose is a complete and utter gamble. So I'm going to go southeast because it looks like there's some rubble and some other interesting things potentially there on that side. That's going to take us to verse 7. It looks like I'd have to have 2 for that status. I only actually have 1 currently, so there's nothing more here. The exploration ends. Otherwise, read on, which I don't get to do. So choosing to swim and then choosing a particular part in the lake to swim in ended up costing me 2 energy. So now I'm down to just 2 left for the rest of the day. I'm going to explore again and check out one of the options that doesn't actually cause me any kind of energy, at least for now. I might check out the reflection on the lake. So it says to go to verse 1. Now this actually shows a great example of some of the hidden information inside the exploration journal you don't get to see even when you read it for the first time. So I can tell there's hidden text here, but I can't see it. The only way to actually access it is to find a secret card that matches the color and then be able to scan this to read the text. So as of right now, it just says otherwise read on. So it says the waters are still. You see only your tired face and the sky looming above your head. Perhaps these were all lies. That's exactly how I feel right now. I was digging around thinking I was going to find a bunch of stuff and I ended up finding nothing and I'm exhausted. I almost have no energy. Yes, but there might be something here, but I need a secret card that's probably going to give me access to something to scan this thing in order to find what might truly be there that I can't currently see. We might as well check out another option here while we're at it. Visit the Stone Shack. You never expected to find an inhabited home this close to the King's Pass. So go to verse 2. So it says, if there's a time token on this location, the hermit won't talk to you. Well, there isn't because I didn't choose to use the hermit for healing, which is the location action. So because of that, I can. This says if you have the notable deeds part 1 status, go to verse 16, taking a look. I do not. So in this case, I just read on. It says,
in his simple dark robe, with a clean-shaven face and a halo of long grey hair, the hermit looks almost like a monk. Tall and lean, he towers over you as he says with contempt, "This is my place. What are you doing here?"
We can choose one. We can tell him you're looking for an adventure. Tell him you're looking for a place to rest. Tell him you're a traveler, trying to return home, or just leave. I just let him know that I'm a traveler trying to get home. It states
the hermit invites you inside his cramped shack. It smells of soot and sweat. He gives you a mug of warm goat's milk. "I know what it means to lose your home," he says, toying with an old green pendant hanging from his neck. "To be trapped away from those you love. Anyway, did you come to see the reflected town? You'd be better off gambling in a brothel. The weather must be just right. The time of day and light must be just right. It never happens more than a couple of times a year, sometimes even less than that." Seeing your disappointed face, he adds, "But I know of something that could help you see the reflection. A real treasure. Once I would never part with it, but I think I used it for too long. It's no longer good for me, you see. I'm ready to trade for whatever you can offer in return."
Well, this sounds awesome because I think it's kind of sounding like he's going to give me something that's going to allow me to see these secret passages, which I would love to be able to see. So it says here, buy his treasure, pay 1 wealth or 1 food, or discard 1 item card, and then go to verse 14 to buy. I got to do this. Now, the real struggle I have here is I've only got 1 food left and 1 magic. I'm pulling myself pretty thin. Now, I do have that item that I picked up here, so I could actually give this away, but it sounds like a really good one, being able to drain a waystone and be able to get some magic back and then basically be able to heal. It's tough to give that one up. I just think that's going to be really, really good, especially as a solo player. 1 character is just that ability to heal. I can basically suck out the power from the waystone itself to kind of heal myself. It just sounds so good. So I might use my last food. I could end up regretting this.
The hermit removes one of the stones from his shack's wall and gives it to you. The stone is heavy, but appears mundane. Noting your confusion, the hermit scowls. What? You thought that's it? I just need you to hold it, fool. From the hole behind the stone, he removes a small item, carefully wrapped in layers of cloth, and hands it to you. Through this weird glass shard, you can see the reflected town at any moment. It also serves to reveal many other hidden things. Just go out and give it a try. But remember, if you ever find your way into the reflection, do not ever speak. Your voice will stir the waters, and then all sorts of horrible things will happen.
Okay, good to know. Gain a secret card 50, and this is important from now on. Whenever the verse you read contains any hidden text, you may use the secret to read it. Now test secret card 50 on the text below. Well, I gotta say, if I'm gonna find a secret, this is a pretty cool secret to find, allowing me to reveal text in these hidden areas that match the colors. So in this case here, it says, go to Book of Secrets, verse 18. And as it states in the top right-hand corner for the Book of Secrets, 18 is gonna give each character an XP. The first one I've gotten. This is really good news because this resource area over here in terms of wealth and food is getting just a bit bare, so nice to be able to put something inside. I think it makes a lot of sense right now to start looking into the reflection on the lake. Going to verse 1 right here allows me to reveal what I couldn't have seen before, and now it says, go to Book of Secrets, verse 385.
As you peer at the waters of the lake through this strange, warped piece of glass, you almost jump back with terror. Instead of your own reflection set against the ruins and the grey sky above, you see a colourful crowd walking down the stone promenade in the light of countless lanterns, with opulent stone townhouses behind them set against the night sky. This golden dream from an age-long past is strangely hypnotizing.
We get to choose when we can spend an energy to enter the reflection, which sounds pretty awesome, or leave. Now, I don't know, this could be a terrible decision, but I have to do it. I technically have 2 energy right now. I can spend 1 and I'm not exhausted. So this is really hard because if I need to spend more energy later, I might get myself into a situation that could be bad. But let's press on and see how this goes.
You carefully walk into the water, waist deep, trying not to stir the reflection in which the top half of your body sticks out of the lake near the town's promenade, your wet face glistening with reflections of golden lanterns. You kneel and submerge your head. Then you slowly prostrate yourself. Golden light floods your eyes. Townsfolk on the promenade look at you strangely, probably not used to someone having a midnight bath. You no longer need to look through the glass. Everything is as real as the world you left behind. You lift yourself up onto the stone embankment and join the crowd, soon reaching the main market of the town, still lively at this hour.
If you don't have the Strange Lessons Part 2 status, each character gains it an XP, and then it says gain Strange Lessons Part 2 status, and then go to verse 189. So I'm going to be getting not only the XP, but also that Strange Lesson Part 2 status. Well, I don't know about you guys, but this has been one of the busiest days that I've done so far. Day 3 has been full of all kinds of craziness, and being able to reveal text that's hidden is really interesting, and I'm glad I was able to actually actually find that. Again, just so you guys understand, I'm going into this one completely blind. Like, I have not played this or pre-played this in any way, shape, or form, and typically I would do that, but in these narrative adventures, I much more enjoy just kind of digging in and seeing what happens, because that's kind of part of the fun of discovery of whatever you run into, and then having to pivot pretty aggressively. Hence the reason why you can see strategy-wise on my wealth and food, it's pretty poor. I'm going to need to focus on trying to find some animals, those green encounters, to try to take them down to get some food. I'm going to need to start generating some wealth so I can buy some things, or I'm going to have to suffer and start selling off some of the items that I have. I honestly think this is a great time to stop for the day, mainly because I'm also in a location that has a vision, so I'll get the benefit of that at the end too. So let's go ahead and end it off. So because I wasn't exhausted at the end of this day, I can go back up to my allotment of 6, and because again I have the self-reliant personal stat, which is given to me because I'm playing solo, it jumps me up to a +1 for the upcoming day. Now, seeing as I'm starting to gain some experience, we're talking about things that I can do. Now, you might look across my attributes here and go, well, you've got 1 here, so if you wanted to put another 1 into this row over here in either side, it's going to cost you, well, there's already 1, so that's 2 XP. So the next point to put in would cost 4. I don't have that, can't do it. And then going down here, same idea, it would cost 4 to put the next point in. I can't do that. Can't do it here either because it's even more expensive. It'd be 8. But what else can you do with your experience at lower values? Well, you can spend 2 experience in order to pick up a diplomacy or a combat card for your deck. And remember, your decks are comprised of 10 cards. And at the end of every day, you can basically manage that deck, build it out the way you want it to, based on all the cards you've gained so far. So I could spend XP to get a card and build it in the deck, but I haven't really used the decks yet. So I'm not really 100% sure which cards I want to go after yet, so I think I'll hold on to my XP for now. The vision here states, a calm dream of gold-bathed streets and colorful mass crowds. You dance, you eat, you wake strangely at peace. Each character in this location here loses 1 terror. This is actually really good because I have 1 terror, so that's going to drop me down. Thank goodness, because remember, I didn't have any food to be able to consume to drop my terror. So now I'm reset back to 0, which is awesome. All right, so going forward, in the interest of time, we'll no longer be talking about things in terms of the flow of the game that you have to do that I don't actually have to do in a given phase. So for instance, at the start of the day, there's like 6 things, but as of right now, the only thing that I have to actually do is just clear up the active events area. So basically, this one's going to go away, and a new one's coming off the top of the deck. This one is called Moss to the Flame. It says, the waystones lit along the trail to King's Pass begin to attract unwanted attention. Search the green encounter deck and place the Hex Leech green encounter difficulty 1 in the lowest numbered location with a waystone. If there are no waystones, place it in the lowest numbered location. Hint, Guardian encounters prevent you from exploring any location they're in. Depending on the roll of the Guardian die made each day, they may also attack you or even drain a waystone of its power, which of course would be really bad. See the Guardian rules in your rulebook for more information. All right, let's see what happens. So we have the Hex Leech now. We need to determine where it's going to land, and it says it's going to go in the lowest numbered location with a waystone. So that is going to be 101, way down here at the very, very beginning. The thing to note here is that we have a G on the card, which does let you know it's a Guardian. We will be using the Guardian die, but not right now because of the timing of when this came out, which is at the very tail end of the start of day phase. We now roll into the actions phase, so it will not be until the next start of day that we activate this Guardian, roll the die, and determine where it's moving. But this thing is going to be prowling around. So heading into day number 4, we've got lots to do. I still want to interact with a couple more things inside the reflected town that I didn't check prior, and now that I have the ability to scan some things, I might find even more good stuff. What I'm going to try this time is I'm going to go with searching the town's ruins for 1 energy, so verse 11. It states if you have the foraging part 1 status, there's nothing more here. Otherwise, we continue on.
In one of the ruined townhouses, you spot some dried sticks protruding from a crack in the wall. Inside, you find a nest of wild geese full of large eggs.
Gain of food, that's good because I literally don't have any, and the foraging part 1 status. Okay, so I'm not gonna be able to come back here and do this again. Now this is great news because this allows me to do something that I talked about in day 3, but now really want to do in day 4 because we got a lot going on the west hand side of the board that has weirdness involved, but no slots to put any more waystones over there. So we're gonna need something else to get through the weirdness. I'm going to go ahead and drop my energy down by 2 to 4 and remove the food I just gained in order to make a weird candle. So I'm gaining secret card 2. And this card states I can discard this card to flip the location you're in or an adjacent location from weirdness side to clear side. Well, I'm going to decide to go ahead and discard this right now for the adjacent location right here. It appears there is a shattered battleground here. Quite interesting. We can gain a magic if we gather some powers here. It says 3 kings of ruin clash here in an age-long past, erasing the local waystone and a nearby Lothian town from existence. Interesting. I've gone ahead and spent an energy, dropped me from 4 down to 3 in order to travel into this location. There's no lightning bolt I need to resolve right away, but there is a card up north there for 108 I have to place. Further north of the Shattered Battlegrounds, we have a card that states if we walk into this, it's going to trigger. It says each party member gains 1 terror, and then we have to resolve a verse in the Book of Secrets. That does not sound good. From where I am right now, it's quite interesting. I mean, there's no slots whatsoever to put any more waystones down. So it's kind of like one of those situations where I probably want to explore inside the Shattered Battlegrounds inside the exploration journal and see what I can find and then potentially get out of here. Shattered Battleground. It says if you have 1 or more parts of the Time Passes Chapter 1 status, go to verse 11. I don't have any of them.
With the merciful shroud of weirdness lifted, the pock-marked face of this damaged land now lies in full view, each hill cleaved in half, each impact crater glistening with shards of obsidian. Each discarded weapon and piece of ancient armor telling a different part of a single story. The tale of the night when the 3 kings of ruin clashed, reshaping the land itself. Forever, twisted shapes lurk between shattered stones and deep crags, as if drawn to powers still lingering here. The more time you spend on the battleground, the greater the chance they take interest in you.
We have lots of choices here. So we can either spend energy to reach the cleaved hillside, we can reach the golden cathedral, reach the bubbling pool, reach the titanic helmet, reach the cracked orb, or leave. And there's other things inside of each of those, as you can see, to help you decide. I chose to spend 1 energy, dropping me from 3 to 2 in order to try to see what the orb is all about. As you can see here, and you can read it for yourself, it didn't really pan out all that great for me. It says if you have at least 2 of empathy, and I only have 1, then I go to verse 8. Otherwise, you place a time token on this location and go to verse 10. Well, this certainly isn't good. Verse 10 says to roll a die and you add +2 for each time token on the location. There's already 1 I just placed, so that's a +2 right at the gates. If I land between a 1 and a 6, nothing happens. Exploration ends. 7 to 8. A creature seems to notice me and I would gain some terror. That's not good. Worst case, 9 to a 10 and I draw real-time aggression from 1 entity in that area. It looks like it'd be a purple encounter. That would be quite nasty. So let's go ahead and roll, and basically I am trying not to land a 9. So if I get a 7 or higher on this roll, I am in big trouble. Here we go. Oh no! It was bound to happen. Well, I guess they're not all bad. This one is a candle bearer. It says, the faint flames of his candle is the most comforting thing to spot in the weirdness. Well, that's good, because I was expecting some monstrosity to come out of the weirdness and just destroy me, which probably could have happened. You may buy 1 secret card to... Oh, you can buy secret card 2 for 1 wealth. Oh, I wish I had some wealth. Each party member with 3 health or lower gains a health. Don't have any issues on that front. And then each party member with at least 3 terror loses 1. So I can't take advantage of any of this, but I guess the only good news in this situation is that I didn't have to deal with some real nasty enemy. So seeing as I dodged a bullet there, I might actually, while I'm over here, knowing that later on this is going to go back to weirdness at some point, and I'm not going to really want to venture over here again until I can maybe create some more weird candles. I might want to push myself to get up to this top location and interact and see what's going on up there. The only downside is again, I can't make a candle, so I'd just be interacting with what's here, which would have me go to the Book of Secrets and going through whatever craziness would come my way that way. I'd have to take a horror in order to go up there, or I should say a terror, but I think it might be worth it to push right now. I have 2 energy, I'll pay 1 to go up into the weirdness. Now, as you can see on that card, there's no other cards to put around it whatsoever. It does tell me to take a terror right now, so I'm jumping my terror track up by 1 to 1. And then we go to the Book of Secrets and check out verse 20.
The weirdness grows denser as you walk up the hills, along an old path that seems to lead towards the King's Pass. Within the mists, blackened teeth of old iron cages jut from the hillside, some still holding twisted, motionless shapes. Soon you see nothing but colourful fog in front of you, and you feel nothing but the physical pain of your body, stretched into different directions by invisible powers. As you prepare to turn back, a song sounds in the mists, somewhere close by. It is so strange and beautiful you stop mid-step. The weirdness seems to resonate with the song, its wisps swirling and dancing to the tune of the voice. But you see no clear way to reach it. You've heard that travellers who stray far from the light of waystones sometimes use shards that allow them to see through the weirdness and reveal many strange hidden things. If only you had one.
Well, guess what I've got? I've got myself a scanner, so I guess I have to check this out. So it says, go to verse 52. Now that is way too cool. I did not expect to find something this awesome up in that back corner. That's ridiculous. Okay, so if you have the Songs of Avalon Part 1 status, it was only an echo and the expiration ends. I don't actually have it, so I just continue reading, and there's a lot of narrative here.
The shard allows you to see the song with your own eyes. A colourful ribbon that causes the weirdness around it to tremble. Following it, you eventually stumble upon a cage that looks freshly painted and unspoiled with rust. Within, a small girl sleeps, curled up on the ground. You inspect her from a safe distance with trepidation, but she seems normal, just a human child left for the horrific powers of weirdness. You look back at the cages that dot the hills, suddenly understanding what transpired here. Someone was leaving human offerings here for years, months after month. Were the cages playing the roles of high water makers, just like the ones used back in homelands to see how far the spring floods reach, how big of a harvest to expect, and how much tax to charge? Or did someone really think all these offerings would cause the weirdness covering the King's Pass to recede? The girl's song is interrupted with a scream once she notices you. Then the scream turns into a long sob as she realizes you are not here to hurt her. While you work her free of her prison, she shares the details of the horrors she's been through. She lived in one of the windmills on shunned lands until a wandering group of druids took her from home a couple of days ago, though she feels like ages have passed since then. The druids locked her up here and left. When the weirdness was close by, the girl endured singing an old song her mother taught her. When the weirdness receded, she rested, slept, and dug for edible roots. Once free, the girl tells you she will find the way home on her own. She's not afraid of weirdness anymore. Walking down the slope, she begins to sing again. Soon the song dies out in the distance, but you shall not forget it.
Gain the Songs of Avalon Part 1 status and the Champion of the Small Folk Part 1. That is awesome. And then each character gains 1 XP. So we have a couple new leads here. It says to return to the Shunned Lands for your reward, and the strange song resonates with weirdness. Find a way to use it. We know how to use this song. I know exactly where I need to go for both of these leads. Now there's times where it is worth going ahead and exhausting yourself. This would be a good time because if I happen to stay in the space with weirdness, when we're resolving end of day effects, that's going to hurt me. It's going to give me 2 terror and it's going to give me 2 wounds, which is not good. So let's go ahead and actually exhaust ourselves to get the extra movement we need to move from where we're at back to the shattered background, which at least is revealed currently, and then the weirdness won't affect us. So because we exhausted ourselves fully, we only go up to 4, and then we get the +1 here from self-reliant, so that's going to jump me up to 5. At this point, if I had food, I could go ahead and eat some in order to deal with some of the stuff I got going on. Can't do that. If I happen to be in a spot with weirdness right now, I would be taking terror and damage because I moved and exhausted myself. I don't have to deal with that. So again, good idea, seeing as I don't want to really cap. Again, if my health starts going down, it starts capping my energy levels. For now, I'm going to continue to store up experience as I'd like to get myself something nice in the attribute columns. As we begin the next day, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to flip any locations that don't touch a waystone to the weirdness side. So this one we're currently on is going to flip over. Also, we're going to remove one time token from each card, so this will be removed at the same time. Next up, we need to activate any Guardians in play, and we do have one to the south. Now, Guardians are dangerous enemies roaming the playable area, so we're going to roll the Guardian die to determine when it activates where it's going to go. So let's go ahead and give it a roll and find out. We got directions on most sides as well as an X, and I'll talk about all of them, and we ended up landing the X. So when you don't get a direction on the die, like north, west, south, or east, and you get an X like this, then each character in the location with this Guardian is going to resolve an encounter with them as a party, and in this case we're playing solo, so just be as a group anyway, or just one individual. But if there aren't any characters in this location, like right now, we remove one waystone from this location's corners. If at least two waystones are in the location's corners, remove the one that touches the lowest numbered location first. And if there aren't any characters or waystones at all, then you move the Guardian to the highest numbered connected location instead. So at the start of the next day, this card that the actual Guardian is on is going to flip over to its weirdness side. For now, it just doesn't have a waystone connected to it anymore. At this point, we're going to clean up the active events area here, so this card will be removed and a new one coming off the top, Chapter 1, Part 5. In the morning, you notice another traveler who camped not far from you. He welcomes you with a grin of blackened teeth and invites you to share a meal of oatcakes and a roasted gallfood. I was heading towards the King's Pass, he says, like every other fool out here, but I've had it. Heading back into the Maidens now. See the weirdness? It's creeping back. Soon, the path will be closed again, and all these quarreling fools up at the pass will be in for a nasty surprise. You part ways shortly after, his words filling you with unease. I believe that's just a typo there where it says feeling you with unease. And then it says gain one food and fade. We get to talk about fade now as a keyword. It's awesome that Elgan ended up getting some food, seeing as he had absolutely nothing. Now we're going to talk about fade and how that works with the waystones. The fade effect, as it impacts the waystones, is a pretty nasty one. So events or other effects in the game, like we just read, can cause the fading of waystones. And if it happens, you find a waystone that touches the lowest numbered location and discard that waystone. So as of right now, there's only one. So, well, that's the one that's going. Now, it's worth mentioning that when the waystones get removed from the land, you don't immediately flip over the card to its weirdness side. This only occurs at the start of day phase when you check all locations that don't touch a waystone, and then you flip them to their weirdness side. So you do have a little bit of a delay there before they all flip over, but you know what's coming. And for me, based on the fact that we not only lost the waystone down here, but the one here means that a lot of locations, literally the entire board, is going to be flipping over to the weirdness side in the near future, making things quite interesting going forward. So I'll absolutely be focusing on mitigating this before those location cards flip over to the weirdness at the beginning of the next day. During this day, right now, I'm going into some actions and I have energy to spend. I'm going to spend that energy heading back over to one of those location cards that has the waystone slot in order to spend the cost to get a waystone back in place to ensure that we can keep this standing the way it is without weirdness creeping in on us. When this card flipped to the weirdness side, there is a bolt here, but that bolt only activates when you move into the location with weirdness, not when it flips from its clear side to its weirdness side. So on our 5th day, I'm going to go ahead and spend one of my energy in order to travel back to the reflected town. At this point, I'm going to do the obvious. I really need to activate another waystone here. So again, this is only available if one of the corners of the card has a waystone slot, which this one certainly does. So we're going to pay 1 magic per character. Thankfully, I have a magic to do exactly that. And I can spend either 1 wealth or 1 food. And I did gain a food recently, so I have just enough to get this waystone up and running. So I've spent my 2 energy to do this action. I've removed a food, removed a magic, so I have no more food, no more magic, no wealth. I have 3 experience, and my energy is now at 2, so I don't have a ton going on, but it kind of makes me want to potentially goof around here at the lake in the Reflected Town. But as you remember from trying that previously, not only did it cost an energy just to do one of those actions you can see there on the far right, but then you had to choose a portion of the lake to investigate, which is another energy, and that would actually push me into an exhausted state, which I really don't want to do, even though I'm quite tempted to try. But at this point, I think I'm going to stay put and just stop for the day here. The other thing to mention is that if you don't have what you need in order to activate a Waystone, alternatively, you can basically pay a blood price instead, where you pay 3 health and you gain 2 terror per character. So a much harsher way to get the Waystones back on the land. But again, if you have the magic, the food, or wealth in combination, then you're A-okay, and it's a lot less painful to go that route. Now, seeing as I am trying to head towards the stone chorus because we now have the song that I need to sing in that location, which is right here, and I can't just go south through here because there's no connecting arrows. I have to go around. I'm going to head down that direction, which is going to get me in a path leading down towards the Guardian here, but I do have one available one that I could take in terms of energy in order to travel at least one more position, so let's go ahead and do that. We'll use the last energy there. Of course, I still have one if I want to exhaust myself, but I don't want to do that. We're going to continue heading to the east. And at this point, I'm quite content to end my day right here. My energy is going to go right back up to 6 because I didn't exhaust myself, and +1 thanks to the Self-Reliant, which gives me that nice boost. Now at this point, we'd be doing character advancement, but I'm choosing not to like I have in every other day prior. I'm just going ahead and continuing to gain XP because I have a couple things I want to do, but they aren't cheap to do. And again, just to get an understanding of how this character advancement step works, because it's a huge part of the game. You're not going to see it very early on, but you will be seeing it in part 2 of my play of Tainted Grail. So I'm going to be definitely, I'm sure, getting some more XP along the way here, as we've gotten 3 so far. So I was looking at aggression, this attribute up here in the top left-hand corner. Now, if I want to upgrade this, you can see this handy little chart here on the reference card that just tells you based on how many points you have in a pair of opposing attributes. So if I want a new point right here, then I have to look at empathy and aggression, see how many points there already are, which there's 1. If I'm trying to go to another point, which would be a second point, I look here and it says second point in a pair of opposing attributes, 4 XP. So I need 4. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. So I'm holding off mainly for that, and the other thing I could do right now if I wanted to, which I've talked about before, but I could spend 2 XP to draw 3 combat cards or 3 diplomacy cards from the advancement pool, and basically be able to choose one and place it into the corresponding deck, and of course be able to rejig the deck to that 10 card limit and change it on the fly. Now, this leads into another thing that's happened during this particular play in part number 1. I have hit some pretty good encounters so far. The encounters that I've hit, there's been 2 of them so far. Both of them didn't push me into either diplomacy or combat. So you haven't seen 2 of the major aspects of the game. Now, of course, if you are familiar with the original Tainted Grail, you know all too well that that happens quite a bit. Whereas within this version of the game, you can see that those decision points of when that could come up or when those are going to happen are going to be less often, and they're also going to be more impactful when they do. So that's kind of another cool change coming in with this one that I really like, is that you're not encountering things just endlessly to the point where it becomes kind of repetitive and annoying. It actually has weight when it finally does show up. And we do have a Guardian in play that is certainly going to run us down that road if we, run into the Guardian itself. But regardless of that, we have the ability to potentially pull an encounter, and it will likely be happening inside of part number 2 because I've gotten quite lucky with the pulls that I've gotten to this point. So the reason I highlighted the character advancement once again and added a couple extra mentions in there is because, again, we have not hit the combat or diplomacy encounters to their fullest. And we're going to hit them in a subsequent video, 100%. But it's been very interesting that I could go through how many days I did and actually not run into a diplomacy or combat encounter that had me actually building out a sequence of cards and going through that aspect of the game, which is a key aspect of the game, but it's just kind of cool that you get to see the fact that this game is doing things differently, and you can actually have different outcomes of your experience. But the other thing I wanted to highlight is the fact that I don't want people to walk away from part number 1 here thinking that all that Tainted Grail here has to offer for Kings of Ruin is kind of a choose your own adventure narrative adventure, and that's it. There's no combat, there's no nothing going on. It's more than that. So you're gonna have to come back in the next video, because I guarantee you, with the Guardian on the board and other encounters ready to tackle me, we are gonna run into some stuff, and they'll be far more impactful when they happen now, because it's kind of leading up to something, and it's a little bit terrifying because I haven't seen anything yet. So whenever it comes, I'm sure it's gonna be a lot of fun. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and you'll come back for the next one to really get a great idea as to how this game operates and plays, and help you make that informed decision. Thank you guys so much, and as always, keep on rolling solo.